Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to K4CO Radio. We are gladly interrupting. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure you were jamming out to some music, but we have a wonderful guest with us this afternoon. We have Johanna Flood with us with Elevated Denver. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a wonderful pleasure. You have, there's so much to actually kind of go into. What Elevated Denver is, of course. But I wanted to actually start a little bit about you, if that's okay. A little bit about your background, what brought you here maybe to Colorado, because I think the backstory is actually really inspiring and interesting. So maybe go into that a little bit about your background, what brought you to Colorado, and then to Elevated Denver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Welcome.
Anything you want.
Yeah, let's see. Let's circle back of 1997. No.
I love it. Long walks on the beach. Yeah, I like it when people start when they're like, I was born
Yes.
August 24th. It was a very dark. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, sort of my journey to Denver, I did go to school here in Colorado and ended up settling down in Denver in the early 2000s and started my career in research and evaluation. And that was just something I was interested in at the time, and it involved working for a nonprofit where we had the privilege of working with a number of other nonprofits to understand what their programming was it effective, was it reaching the impact that they hoped. And throughout the number of years that I did that work, I met truly amazing people doing fantastic work. I also really got to sit with a number of communities to understand what was happening there that was affecting those specific communities, and how could we develop programming in partnership with other nonprofits to affect positive change. And that sort of methodology that I learned was called community-based participatory research. And it really lit a fire for me. The opportunity to sort of learn firsthand from other people what their experiences were and what affected them, what drove them, and to really figure out how to harness the incredible knowledge and expertise within community really spoke to me and gave my career a little bit more direction. And so I started doing a lot of that and focusing on that more, the community-based participatory research. And while I was doing that, I also got interested in some public health issues and decided, well, let's go back to school, go get my master's in public health, dive a little bit deeper in that subject matter. And I ended up moving to California to do that. And the real story here, which we will not get into, is that I went to California for school and also to be with my now husband. So it was a dual-purpose relocation, but while I was there, I had the opportunity to sort of be on the cusp of another methodology that is sort of part of my repertoire now, which is called collective impact. And that's something that was talked about at that time. It came out from Stanford Social Innovation Review to say, how do we really tackle these huge social issues? And the collective impact model was by bringing people together across sectors to do that. And I thought, this is really interesting. Let me explore this a little bit. And as I was exploring, I thought, how does this tether together with my roots of community and my belief that community knows best what they are struggling with and what they need, and where's their seat at the table? So I was kind of grappling with all of this when I graduated, had a couple babies, got the opportunity to be a part of sort of another piece of my now puzzle, and I realized
going on and on, but it all comes together. So while I was still in California, I had this amazing opportunity to be a part of a lab at a local foundation there called Tipping Point Community Foundation, and they were trying to solve for poverty in the Bay Area, and they thought, you know what, there needs to be innovation in the social sector. How do we do that? And they started this lab where they brought different folks together to say, how might we solve these problems in new ways? I had the opportunity to be a part of that. I was a part of a small group that looked at how does childcare and lack of access to affordable childcare impact people's trajectory into and out of poverty. And through that effort again, we decided to sit really deep. We did sort of a broad scan of the Bay Area and the impact of lack of access to childcare, but decided to focus real deep in one community and say, what's happening here? Let us just hone in. And we ended up building phenomenal relationships and co-designing a solution to childcare in that community that we called Jima Village, and it brought together grandmas from the neighborhoods to provide care for low-income families. And it was amazing. It was so grassroots. We had people running it right alongside us that were parents or grandparents. And what we were finding is these deep bonds were being created. Grandmas were getting a little extra cash, and the families were getting trusted, safe, reliable care that allowed them to move into employment, keep their jobs, get education. And it was just such a beautiful process. And for me, sort of at the culmination of that, I thought, how do we tie these things together? How do we look at understanding, the deep understanding of what's happening in community, and allowing space for those folks to define what's happening, define the solutions, and really be a part of it in a way that they've not been before, and bring other people together across sectors and really harness all that knowledge and momentum. And I've been noodling on that for the past 10 or so years. And I, at some point, came back to Colorado at about 2016. My family and I decided to come back here because this is where it's not my ultimate roots. I'm from Minnesota, but really my more recent roots are really formed here in Colorado, and this felt like home to me. And I was looking for every opportunity to come back. And in 2016, my husband and I and my 2 kids came back to Colorado and really re-rooted in the community here. And as I was doing a few other things professionally and personally, I was still sitting with this: how do we drive large-scale impact, and how do we do that by putting the community first? And what's missing from the pieces of the puzzle? And once again, I moved into a position professionally where I got the opportunity to meet, know, and understand a lot of the people and players and programs and things that were happening in this town. And I also got to see where the gaps were and how I might fit into those. And so that kind of brought me to the realization that I needed to be a part of change in a different way. And that's sort of the origin story of Elevated Denver.
I love it. Well, thank you. That was very encompassing. I appreciate it. When you say community, my brain goes to, there's so much that goes into that. From what we have learned about Elevated Denver in your podcast is you focus quite a bit on homelessness. But again, as you mentioned, affordable childcare, then you have affordable housing, you have food coupons, programs to help with that. There's a whole recovery movement that's really taking effect in Colorado where addiction comes into play. There's so much around community. So are you staying kind of with what is the driving force for homelessness? Is that kind of the reason behind? I don't know how to ask that question, but is that the main focus, or are you looking at all of these different parts that are culminating together?
I think that's a great question. And I think it's interesting because I do use the word community a lot, and it can mean many different things and at different scales. And for Elevated Denver, why we're focused on homelessness is when this all started in 2020, 2021, of course, our community was in such a crisis and continues to be in crisis around homelessness and many other contributing factors and related factors to homelessness. But what we really saw was that homelessness is often at the root or a part of many of the struggles that people were facing. And it seemed to be escalating. And while there was many folks working on it, things weren't getting better. And so what we decided to do was look at it from both the lens of what's happening from the perspective of people experiencing homelessness. So in this instance, when I say community, sort of largely we're talking about folks who have or are currently experiencing homelessness. And we wanted to understand, what is that experience really like? We'd see data in the newspaper every day about numbers and what was going on. We'd see a lot of data about addiction and other things, but what we didn't understand was the story behind it. So part of it was really understanding the story to really know the dimensions of the issue. But what we also understood was that this is not, homelessness is not a condition of human failure or individual failure. What we really believe is that the system, the safety net, the services and supports that are supposed to catch people when they're on struggling and having hard times and then bolster them back to stability, what we believed was that that was broken. And to understand where that is failing people and how that's contributing to the crisis of homelessness, we needed to also dig deeper on that angle. So community is really the folks who are or have experienced homelessness. And we're also stepping back to understand what's the context the community sits in and how does that impact their experience.
I love that you're going after this system. We hear that quite a lot. We have a lot of health professionals and a lot of addiction experts coming in, and it always kind of goes back to community. And how do you make it better, healthier, stronger so it thrives? And a lot of times the system is broken, and it's how do you navigate through the correct people, the correct resources. So what an awesome fight that you all are after. We're definitely going to explore. Did you have, I didn't want to.
No.
Okay.
I'm just kind of like getting it all in. So
yeah. Well, I've been in the nonprofit world for 30 years. And so I'm used to trying to fight the system, and community is always at the root, at the center of it. So I love that it's the apex for you guys as well. So what is we'll go into more detail. We'll take a break here in about 5 minutes, but what is the kind of ultimate goal? Because you have Elevated Denver and you're a co-founder of that. And then you have the podcast portion of it. So what really is the goal? Is it to bring awareness, to get more funding? How are you kind of navigating through that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. There certainly are immediate things that we need to keep the effort going, but the overall goal of Elevated Denver is actually to fix the very system that is broken so that people can live with dignity and their well-being, all of our well-being is at the forefront, because what's happening to anybody in our community actually affects all of us. So the ultimate goal is to create a system that actually functions for people so people can get what they need and at the exact time that they need it. And we think to do that, it's incredibly important for us to help educate the broader public as well as policymakers and others about what's really happening, what those lenses and perspectives can tell us about the system, and sort of harnessing that knowledge and expertise of the community, the folks who have been affected by homelessness, and bring that to the forefront so people can see that, hear that, understand that, and then create the space for people to design new solutions. And in that space, ensure that the folks, the people, members of the community, those who've experienced homelessness, have experienced these systems, have a core seat at that table to define the problem and define and create the solution.
I love it. I always try and find the solution. There's always a solution.
Or many.
It's just, there are many. Josh's phrase is, what is it? There are 7 solutions to every problem?
So I was always raised 7 solutions to every problem, at least. So every time I'd be stuck, my dad would just be like, hey, there's always 7 solutions to every problem. And it's just, of course, not exactly 7, but there's always so many different things you can do. And I'm very curious about this. I'm interested in talking about this because I think what we're doing has absolutely failed. Mm-hmm. And you can't just throw money at it. You can't just, there's no solution that I can see. But trying to get there is the step. So
it's really hard to hold hope in this space. And I often tell my co-founder and our team and board constantly, like, we have to hold the vision for what could be. Mm-hmm. Because the honest truth is that there are many people working on this. The problem continues to get worse. It's hard to see out of that. And we also have to break down barriers like traditional funding infrastructures that say Let's do something that's been tried before because that feels safe. And we're here to push those boundaries and say, no, we have to try new things. We have to do this differently, or we will never get to a different end game. Right?
Yeah.
For sure. We literally had this conversation yesterday.
It's insanity doing the exact same thing and expecting different results. So, yeah.
It is. I'm affiliated with another nonprofit, and it's what Josh and I talked about yesterday. It's like, if you've been doing the same thing for 60 years and it hasn't gotten you to where you need to be, maybe reinvent the wheel at this point, or be open to other opinions and trying it a little differently.
Exactly.
So awesome. Well, for those of you just tuning in, this is a special K4CO radio interview. We have been chatting with Johanna Flood. Am I saying that right?
Johanna.
Yep. Johanna. I knew when it came out. Johanna Flood. Thank you. With Elevated Denver, you can find her website at elevateddenver.co. Also on Facebook as well. We're going to take a quick music break, but stay tuned. I want to definitely delve in a little bit more with you as well.
Welcome back on K4CO Radio. We are sitting down with Johanna Flood here with Elevated Denver. And on your Facebook page, it says kind of what we were talking about, elevating the voices of those who have experienced homelessness and co-creating innovative solutions. And innovative solutions, that is a very powerful phrase right there, I must say.
Thank you.
Because we were kind of talking off air and just how things are going, and it's definitely not going in a direction to solve this issue. So when it comes to innovative solutions, can you kind of elaborate a little bit on the steps taken to try to do this? Is this a lot of government work, a lot of lobbying, a lot of trying to get people to understand the situation?
Great question. So I want to start by saying one thing, which is innovation. I just want to make clear that we see innovation as anything different than what's happening today. And that could be small or it could be large, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't know. So what we really believe is that you have to learn first to understand what's going on and to drive the solutions. We couldn't possibly create these without doing that. And so a natural part of our evolution and the core of our work is always learning. And we actually just put together something we call a community landscape, which is on our website. You can find it there. It's an issue brief that talks about the insights we've gained over the past year and a half talking to folks experiencing homelessness, and most specifically about 40 folks that we sat down for a couple hours with to map their journeys into homelessness and around the system so that we could identify uniquenesses in everybody's story and journey, but more importantly, the commonalities and how they've engaged with the system and where the system is broken down. And we think how to create the solutions around these breakdowns is by bringing folks together who have different perspectives and levels of expertise. So that's business, that's nonprofit, that's policy, but again, most importantly, it's the lived expertise. People who have navigated these systems themselves. How do we bring them together and help create a process for people to design a solution? So what we've done is created this model. We call it a collaboratory, and that is the name for the space where we bring people together. We just ran our first one over the course of the summer, and what it looked like was bringing 10 folks together with those different types of expertise for 6 sessions. Sometimes it was a half day, sometimes it was a little bit less than that. And we really dove deep on one pain point. So the first one we looked at was that when people are needing support, whether they're on the cusp of homelessness or they're just experiencing some challenges making ends meet, or they're first unhoused, they are having incredible challenges finding what supports might be available to them and how to access those supports. Mm-hmm. And there are things that exist for folks, but if you do not know how to identify or access those, you're not going to get connected, and you're so much more likely to fall into homelessness. And if you're already unhoused, you're so much more likely to become chronically unhoused as you wait to figure out how the system works so that you can, figure out how to work that system to get what you need. And it's so much harder to regain stability. So we said, that's a problem, and there are 5 to 7 solutions to that problem, no doubt. But no one's focused there, so let's do that. So we felt it was really important to hone in on one specific thing we wanted to fix, not the whole system at once, but rather tackle it piece by piece. And so we took that piece, we brought together these 10 folks, and we said, let us tell you what we've learned about this. Let's uncover what else we need to understand about why this is a problem that exists, what's being done right now, and what's failing, and how do we improve on that. And so we spent some sessions doing that, and then once we had that groundwork covered, the group was really able to go into how could this look different? How could we build something that works for people so that when, someone buys their building and raises the rent by $1,000 a month and they cannot make that rent, and yet they look around Denver and there's no other place to rent that's reasonable, they can figure out what assistance is available to them to keep their housing, for example. And this group is amazing. This collaboratory group, phenomenal individuals who really, really took this to heart and came up with some incredible ideas that built off the strengths that exist within community, within the system, the strengths that are there, and came up with a few solutions that were possibilities. And what we did is we took those and we went and tested them with folks who are either currently unhoused or housing unstable or who had been unhoused in the past, and asked them to reflect, how would this work if you were looking for resources? If you fell on hard times, engage with this. And we really sort of built mock-ups for people to engage with. And it became perfectly obvious to us that when you are experiencing things that make your life unstable, or you first experience homelessness, those are traumatic occurrences. You're in crisis. And what you need in crisis is not another app, which we explored, I will be honest, because that's the world we live in right now. But what people wanted more than anything was human connection with someone who was willing to hear them and see them and help them decipher what's going on. What do you need first? And then what's available, and how can I help you connect to that thing? And then what's next? Mm-hmm. And so that's the solution that came out of our first collaboratory. We call it a peer-staffed, neighborhood-based resource hub. So what we envision is that we will have, in a place and space that already exists in community, that any one of us might enter on any given day, the library, the rec center, for instance. We have folks there who are knowledgeable about the system and have navigated it themselves and have training on how to connect people and help them navigate through the system, are there. And folks can come in and sit with them and say, hey, this is what's going on with me. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what. Or they might come in and say, I know I just need food assistance right now or food support. But they have someone who's willing to sit with them and listen and really help and say, hey, I know these 3 things. Do you want me to go there with you? Do you want me to call them with you? How can I best support you getting this resource? And feel free to come back and tell me how it's going, and let's move to step 2. So that's the solution that came out of our first collaboratory. We think it's pretty innovative. Now, do peer models exist? Do we have things that exist in our community where people who have experienced homelessness themselves are helping others? Absolutely. And it's important to keep building the evidence base for that and building out more programs. Do we already have some peers in libraries? Yes. But do they have the funding to go to all the libraries yet? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. Can we help them, try it in different areas further afield from downtown, so people who can't get to resources really easy or have transportation challenges can have a place where they can get support? Yes, we need to test that. We need to build that in. So when we talk about innovation, this whole model is not totally new. It's building off things we know that work, but we're putting them together in a new way and for a new group of people. And we'll see what works. And part of our core ethos is we learn from everything we do. And we openly share every bit of our learnings, whether people are tuning in or not, because we don't want to recreate the wheel. We don't want to take something that's not ours. We want to share so other people can implement what's working, and they can not, spend their time or money or resources doing something that we already found out doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And we can just build together and start to build a really collaborative effort to solving homelessness.
I love it. No, the peer-based groups, of course, and having a liaison and education absolutely is a huge factor. I'm curious, how big of a group is Elevated Denver as far as board members, volunteers, etc.?
Well, this is a great question. I really appreciate it because I always say we're a small, scrappy team. But you know what? Truth be told, we are really a lot bigger than that. So the actual sort of staffing of Elevated Denver is myself, my co-founder, Leanne Morrison. And then we also have an amazing woman who works with us on all of our community partnerships and on development, Lisa Becci. And the three of us spend a lot of time together, and we sort of roll up our sleeves and do everything that is required. And we did the podcast with some other support, and that's really the core team. But truth be told, we are so lucky because we have an advisory board that is really in this with us. Each and every one of them really believe in the work we're doing and are committed to doing this work differently. Right now, that's at 11 folks who show up with us about every 6 weeks and really go deep. In fact, we have a retreat on Friday where we're really rolling up our sleeves and talking about what are our priorities and what do we need to do and what's most important for the community and how do we share what we're learning and keep engaging folks. So those folks are amazing and right by our side doing this work. The folks who joined the collaboratory, everybody who wasn't a lived expert was there on their own time and free will and spent a lot of time with us working on this. We did stipend the folks with lived expertise. We think that's absolutely critical and important. And truthfully, most other people were there, were covered by their employer on their time to be there. But still, people are devoting time and energy. And we also have amazing volunteers who have said, I love what you're doing. Let me help you. And thank you. We have volunteers who have helped us with data visualization. Someone has created an amazing video to show our resource hub idea. Someone's helped me with the website, which is fantastic, with social media. We have had so many people donate food. All these times we gather people, we feel it is absolutely important to break bread together. But we have, scrappy team and an even scrappier budget. So we've had amazing partners in the community who have said, let us do that for you. Let us provide the food. Let us give you supplies. So we are it's a small team, but it's really extended far beyond that. And we are really lucky to have so many supporters and great folks involved in the work.
That's wonderful. I know a lot of times the behind the scenes, people don't ever see that. And it is so incredibly vital and crucial in every organization, whether it be a nonprofit or a for-profit business. There's so much that goes on. So having a board and advisories and members, volunteers, it's very crucial.
It is, and you stated something a little earlier that I've just been kind of thinking about. So, one, we talked about a lot of people don't know where to find certain resources, of course, and two, you even mentioned, with rent going up, and we're in a situation, of course, that everybody can see where prices are just going up exponentially. And I mean, right now the average cost of a one bedroom in Denver is around $1,700. I mean, that's a mortgage right there for a family. So how can people actually search out and find resources, and what can they do? I mean, where are these solutions or possible solutions coming from?
It's a great question. I can't tell you how many times I have searched for different resources that are available as we've met so many people in the community. They've called us and said, help me figure out how to deal with this, what's going on. And I have to tell you with all honesty, I have struggled tremendously to find what people need and help folks navigate this. There are some things out there, absolutely. A lot of people use a Google search. I need help with this. Where is this? There is 211 you can call, which is particularly good at telling you where there's food access. an immediate shelter. And there are a couple other databases, but what's interesting is that you almost have to be connected to an agency that services folks experiencing homelessness before you gain access to those databases or those other resources, or before you have an entry point to knowing they exist.
It's almost like you have to be homeless before you're homeless.
Exactly. And we're trying to prevent that.
Right.
Need from happening. Yeah, you really have to know the system and have a player in the system to help you before you can get support almost.
Are you all partnered or affiliated with any other groups or nonprofits?
Yes, partnership and collaboration is everything for us. And while we maybe don't formally partner, we have fantastic representation on our board. We also have a larger stakeholder group that we engage, and there are many other nonprofits, many of them serving the unhoused population in Denver and beyond, who are a part of that and really care deeply about our work. And we try to figure out how we can support one another.
Wonderful. I mean, I'm racking my brain of all the different nonprofits that are out there. I mean, it's sometimes a curse and a blessing. I mean, to be in Colorado, the joke is when people move here, they start a nonprofit, and there's actually some truth to that. We have so many thousands of nonprofits, which is great if we, collaborate and collectively help, because we have crisis center and we have rehab centers and, of course, grocery stores. So I'm thinking how to, collaborate to reach a diaper drive or a food drive or a clothing drive, or if you are in a really dangerous situation, which a lot of people probably are. I don't know the backstory for a lot of homelessness, but if it's, a situation where it's dangerous, that you can go to the shelter, you can call this helpline. So, we'll keep our ears out for how to help in this situation. I was also thinking, do you provide resources? Because you had mentioned the library when people can come and talk to you. So if it's a one-on-one, do you have a liaison or someone to have that peer session with people if they need to meet with a human body? Is that?
Yeah, so the model that we're going to pilot in the next year, so we'll learn the answer to a lot of these questions, but what we're going to try is actually having a peer at the library or rec center available for a set number of hours each week during specific times that are consistent, so anyone who comes in can get connected to them and have that conversation right away. And one thing, knowing that there's no sort of one source of truth that's easy to access for all the available resources. One thing we do know is that as peers are trained and working in this field, they tend to create their own list of resources. And in fact, they tend to have the most up-to-date knowledge about what's actually available and how to get it. Mm-hmm. And so one thing we're building in is, how do we support the peers that'll be working in the hub to sort of capture that information about resources, keep it up to date? And that might funnel into something bigger later, but to start, that'll help them navigate and share resources with the people who come in seeking them. So that's step one. There's still a lot of work to be done to make sure that we have accurate resources. And you're absolutely right. I always tease that Denver is the Silicon Valley of nonprofits.
It's so true.
Isn't it? It's
I think we have 20,000.
We have more per capita than any other place in the world. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And it's wonderful because the spirit is all there. We want to help folks. We think we have a mechanism to do that. And sort of the unfortunate, unintended consequence of that can often be a lack of collaboration. And part of that is honestly fueled by the fact that there are a few dollars to go to all these services and supports. And so a lot of times nonprofits, unfortunately, have to fight each other for these limited dollars. And that's not what anybody actually wants. But the truth is we don't have a mechanism yet to collaborate in a way that shares resources and really aligns efforts and the impact we want to see. And so our collaboratory model is almost a microcosm of that. How do we test that with a smaller group on a smaller scale? And see how we might collaborate and bring folks together and really align in that way. And can we do that at a larger scale?
I love it. Well, I definitely want to get into more of that. We're going to take a quick break, but definitely stay tuned with us. For those of you just tuning in, we have an exclusive interview here on K4CO Radio with Johanna Flood with Elevated Denver. After the break, I want to get into how people can get involved, which is really important because we have a lot of people in Colorado that want help and volunteer, how they can donate, where the funding goes, and all of that. So stay tuned. We're going to break to a quick music break and be right back. Good afternoon, everybody. I was jamming to that one. That one's a really upbeat, hopeful one. Thank you for that. Well, those just tuning in, we have had a very special guest with us, Johanna Flood with Elevated Denver. Definitely check it out. She is on a crusade and changing the world. I love meeting and talking with people that do this. So definitely check out Elevated Denver. You can find them on Facebook, of course, and on the website. We'll put all of this up as well because we'll be posting the interview. So those that have missed it, we will be posting here in about a week with our beautiful faces and audio. We were just talking about how that always sounds to us. But I wanted to go, we talked a little bit off air about allocating resources correctly. So let's get into where the money goes and how people can get involved.
Yes, thank you. So really right now, let's say for the next 12 months, what we're really focused on is piloting this concept that I told you about, the neighborhood-based resource hub, to see, does this work? If we go out to neighborhoods that are a little farther afield than downtown and we meet people right where they're at and have someone really sit with them and connect and help navigate what do they need and how do they find what they need, does that help folks? Does it help sort of the long game there is help prevent people from falling into homelessness or get back on their feet if they have fallen into homelessness? But it's also about, are we connecting as a community? Do people feel that they have a place they can trust? Do they feel more knowledgeable about the resources that exist? Once we do that, we will have a really good understanding of what aspects of this model are important and how we share that. So that's really a huge focus over the next year for us. And again, partnering with other folks to deliver and to reflect on what we're learning from this and what that means for the broader system. So that's huge and important. I told you all that we came to this solution through a collaboratory, right? And there are more solutions to be developed. There are more problems to solve, and we intend to do that. And we are hoping in the next few months to bring together another group of individuals. Again, it's a small group, 8 to 12 folks across sectors and folks with lived expertise to get ready to tackle the next challenge. And come up with that next solution that we can then test. So that's on the horizon. We will be starting to talk to folks and looking for folks who are really invested in trying something new, really invested in examining what's working and what's not for what exists, but also be willing to step into the space of what doesn't yet exist and explore that with us and sit side by side with other folks around that table and roll up your sleeves and come up with a solution. So we will be looking for folks for that. So please reach out if that's of interest or you're curious to learn more. And then we also have, we actually didn't end up talking much about this, but we actually have a podcast that's anyone can access right now, also called Elevated Denver. We have 30 episodes across 2 seasons, and that podcast sort of continues to live on as a sort of storytelling educational base where you can go deep on the real human stories behind homelessness, really understand these dimensions and what people are going through when they're having this experience in their life. And we also dive into different topics around homelessness that a lot of us don't often get to get into. We dive into evictions. We talk about encampments. We talk about a lot of things from the perspective of people who are experiencing it, and we bring in a lot of experts who are working in the field, people who've developed policies around this, for folks who are doing affordable housing. We really try to get a holistic view of these issues and bring these stories to light. So really encourage folks to continue tuning into the podcast. Hopefully there's more episodes on the horizon, but for now it's there's plenty of content there to dig into and really learn from. So as we move forward, there's that. The last thing I'll say is we are committed to continuing to learn from our community. And so I mentioned a little earlier that we've put together what we call a community landscape, an issue brief that sort of illustrates what's happening in our community. That's built off of the nearly 40 interviews we did with folks on the ground experiencing homelessness that we then brought back to another 40 folks experiencing homelessness or who had in the past, and validated and built on those insights. And that sort of provides a base of depth of understanding of what's happening in the community, and we intend to build on that. We are talking to folks in some subpopulations that we know are growing populations of folks that are experiencing homelessness or housing instability or other related challenges, including older adults, including LGBTQ plus individuals. So we're going to continue to look at how do we help uncover an understanding of what's going on for people that are often ignored in this. So those are all the things that are kind of teed up and on the horizon. So there's lots of work to be done. We are absolutely, as you can hopefully tell, very passionate about this. We believe in what we're doing, and we need more people aligned with us. We always need more funding, and if you donate to us, I promise it is going to go to all of these efforts to build the knowledge base, share the stories, bring people together, and develop and implement solutions. And you can do that on our website, elevateddenver.co/donate. Anyone can reach out to me, Johanna, JOHNNA, at elevateddenver.co. Yes, we need all the help we can get. This is it. Truly, we always say this, but it is truly going to take all of us to build an elevated Denver. So jump on board, reach out, listen, tune in.
I love it. Well, there's definitely a lot of hope for the future. I appreciate that. And fingers crossed, maybe another podcast will be in the future here in another year or two, maybe. It's been wonderful chatting with you. I like the innovation, especially the collaboration as well.
How can people listen to the Elevated Denver podcast? Where's the best place to find them?
You know, it's really on all podcast platforms. Okay. So if you use Spotify, that's, I think, easy because everyone can access it, even if you don't have an account. It's also on Apple Podcasts. I think Google Podcasts shifted to something else, but it's on there somewhere, and Amazon. And then you can find a link through our website as well. So
that's wonderful. And you said you've had thousands of people tuning in to your podcast. That's amazing for being a little bit still in infancy stage. To have that many people following you is incredible.
Thank you. So we feel so lucky.
That's a tribute to what you're doing, and people are definitely. And I agree. It's such a process because especially, at least that's what I find when you start a new project of anything. It's okay, how to educate, how to get the word out, how to get people involved. So it's been fabulous. So anything that we can do, we'll of course be posting this, and anything that K4CO Radio can do to help get the word out. We are here for that.
Thank you. So, and I think I would say it's also a testament that there are so many people in our community who want to help, want to be a part of something positive, want to see a positive shift, and it's hard to know how to do that. And I think that's really part of why we have such a listenership with the podcast, is because people really care. And I appreciate you all. And I know you all really care about this and everything that's facing our community here in Colorado. And I really appreciate you having me here today and giving me this time to share our work and really appreciate the partnership.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Josh and I are both natives to Colorado, so we absolutely love the state, and I do. I am.
It's been through a lot of changes.
It has been. I knew. Yeah, yes. I come at it as the glass is half full. I definitely think people want to work together, and that they are positive and wanting to see a positive, hopeful change. And it is sometimes taking, the spear leader to make that needle move a little bit.
It's easy to lose hope a little bit when you see everything going on, especially getting worse, as you said. So Yeah.
Well, we will continue to find a solution.
Yes, exactly. We always will. So
Always do. Well, thank you again for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Anything else that you wanted to make sure that we brought up? Did we?
I think we covered
everything?
it
Okay,
all.
good.
Yeah, I feel like I talked too much. So
Not at
No,
all.
that was absolutely perfect. Thank you for the backstory and Elevated Denver. Of course, we will be watching you all, and I hope that selfishly that another podcast comes out. But we'll keep our ears in tune for that.
Definitely check out the podcast, Elevated Denver, and then you can also email them for any information at info@elevateddenver.co, and their website is elevateddenver.co as well. So thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it.
thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get back to our regular scheduled music going on right now. We definitely thank Johanna Flood for coming on in, and check it out, Elevated Denver, and listen to the podcast. It's definitely an issue that everybody thinks about, everybody sees, everybody goes. So thank you again for coming in, and stay tuned and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much.